Hey, Shadow Stalkers. Today marks my 1-year anniversary since the Darkness Diaries joined YouTube. As a special treat for this milestone, I've gathered a bunch of stories to be posted throughout the day by some amazing storytellers and friends. Thank you for supporting us over the last year. Here's to another year filled with captivating storytelling. It's time to enter the darkness with the Graveyard Keeper. Last Friday, I played a game that promised to change my life. It did, but not how I expected. Let me tell you about the night that turned my world upside down. There's a weird game going around in our town. It started long ago and comes in waves like a strange El Niño. The new girl in our junior high class, Bryn, was the one who told me and my friends about it. Basking in that exotic new girl from Away's attention, she told us all about how she found our town quaint and the school amusing, and how they were still unpacking and getting settled in, including getting the appropriate protections in place, that was. Oh, like the alarm systems and stuff? One of my friends offered. Bryn scoffed, then tossed her hair, before explaining she meant the real kind of protection. You know, warding? She looked to us for confirmation, but none of us knew what that was. She laughed again, and it sounded mean. Evil eye, that ring a bell? No? My goodness, I suppose I expected it to be a little backwards here. Well, what is it then, since you're such a know-it-all? Another girl in our group pushed back, clearly irritated by Bryn's holier-than-thou attitude. I suppose, Bryn replied, letting her "oh" drag to show how clearly unrattled she was by the aggressive tone levied at her. You could come over Friday night and find out. By Friday, though, only 3 of us made it to her house. Bryn swore she'd done it before, that it was the thing to do where she came from, as she closed her bedroom door and bent to retrieve some things from beneath her bed. A bottle, deep murky red through the glass, a small tube of paper cups in a plastic sleeve, a couple of candles, a Bic lighter, a small box that sounded like it contained bits of metal, and a hammer. I didn't know what this little game was, but I was already getting a bad feeling about it. Bryn explained the rules as she set out 5 paper cups and uncorked the bottle. The game was simple, she said. You drank a little to get nice and loosened up. You'd turn off the lights and light the candles. You cracked the window open, lit a candle and set it on the sill with a cup of wine. Sangria, she proclaimed smugly, next to it, to draw them out. Bottoms up, she added, and we all took a glug out of the paper cups. It burned like cinnamon on my tongue and tasted like fruit and nail polish remover. To draw who out? I asked. She ignored me. She went on instead, explaining that you mustn't watch the window, but instead trust that the candle would show their shadows. You had to be a little drunk to be on the right level to see them, but once you were, you'd see them clear as day. She was refilling our cups with the wine, and this time only narrowed her eyes at each of us to tell us to drink it down too. We all did, and that seemed to placate her. She continued, You must leap to the wall and hammer a nail into the shadow, pinning it there. Pinning what? The creatures. She finally answered the question as she stood, flicking the lights off, leaving only the 2 candles lit in the room. Fairies, brownies, little magic things that you bind to your house. Once you nail their shadow, they're bound to the house for as long as the nail is in the wall, and they have to protect it. Sensing the question coming, she added, From fire, break-ins, floods, any danger to your house they have to stop because they're stuck to it. You just leave the nail? I was feeling very bad about this indeed. Even if I believed in all this, and with the warm rush of the wine moving through me in the dark of the bedroom, it seemed more and more believable. It sounded like playing with fire, pissing off something with the power to protect your house, something with magic, and enslaving it with a trick. Bryn looked at me and smiled. At our old town, we'd just hang pictures over the nail. You forget it's even there. She looked away, and her smile twisted, looking evil in the flicker of the candles. We do. I doubt they forget. She set one of the 2 candles on her windowsill, and next to it, a paper cup topped off with the sangria, before returning to the 3 of us sitting on the floor. And then, we waited. We took another couple of drinks of wine as we sat there, still, in the dark. My eyelids began to drag, my blinks becoming longer and longer. Bryn had put some music on, but it had no words, only instruments, all low and minor key. And with that mix of the wine, the music, and the nervousness of the girls around me, my eyes started to see things. Shapes at first, just black, formless shadows. But as I looked closer, I saw horrible little eyes, mouths screaming silently. And I awoke in the dead of night. Bryn was turned in her bed back to me. The other girls were asleep. I look up and I swear I see one, a tiny shape, wriggling on a nail. Wait, what? Had I passed out? Fallen asleep while the others indeed carried out hammering a nail, I crept out of bed and approached it. I had to be dreaming, but there it was. It was shaped like a human, but not. Its head was bristled with gross, thick hairs like fake eyelashes, and its eyes, large, wet frog's eyes, blinked and narrowed and widened over a yawning mouth that slashed from one edge of its noseless face to the other. It looked to have 4 arms, only the arms were joined by filmy webbing that looked wet and spitty. It had 2 legs like ours, but they curled back like a cricket's, scratching at the wall behind it. And through one of those legs stuck a shiny silver nail. I looked again at the nail. It looked so cruel, pinning a living, hurting creature there, that I just couldn't stand it. Yet as I reached out, plucked at the end of the nail, the little thing reared forward and bit me. I gasped and pulled my hand back, surveying the bloody circle, then looked back at it. I should have been terrified, but maybe that wine, heavy in my veins, or maybe in a state of half-sleep. I wasn't. Instead, I thought about what Bryn had said, the way she captured them, tied them to a house forever, then hung a picture over what she'd done, ignoring how she'd trapped a living thing into service to her, forever. As though the little creature could read my mind, and maybe it could, after all the other impossible lines its presence and bite had crossed. It snapped its mouth again, but as I put my hand back out, it eyed me, watched me grasp the nail with my fingers. They were more slippery now, because of the blood, but I had to finish what I started, and I pulled it free. The thing hung there, floating. It looked at me. I couldn't move, and was suddenly very aware that the thing was now free. Free to do whatever. Bite me again? It did not bite me. It smiled, a sick, slowly spreading smile that made my skin break out in a cold flush. It licked its horrible beetle-shine lips. And then, it was gone. Just blinked out of existence. I put the nail back into the hole in the wall, then went to the bathroom. The next morning, all looked the same as it had, only less scary. I would have thought I was dreaming, but then, how did I have this perfect circular scar on my finger? I chalked it up to the stolen sangria and the incense and the power of suggestion. Bryn and I didn't hang out again. It was at least mutual. I think my being such a baby about the game made me persona non grata for her. I asked the others about it, and surprise, surprise, none of them wanted much to do with Bryn after that either. When I asked about what had happened, though, I got the same story as mine. They'd been sat there, wine drunk and in an almost trance, and then, lights out. Not one of them remembered what had happened. Sometimes I wonder if there'd been more than wine in that bottle. After all, I'd never seen Bryn open her mouth and take a drink. Summer came, and when autumn returned us to our first year in high school, Bryn ended up not going to my high school. But that's not the end. Because one day in my senior year, I heard about Bryn again. Specifically, how she died. She'd been working in the hardware store. Smug or not, we all needed money for clothes and concerts, and a pallet had fallen off a high shelf onto her. And that pallet had been completely loaded, each box straining with its fully metal load. Nails. It was so overfilled that the occasionally rain-like ping-ping of nails falling free from it had been heard before, to the point where the storekeepers sort of tuned it out. considering it normal. But one day, the pallet tipped over and fell on Bryn. And as it fell, hitting shelves and racks and Bryn herself on its way to the ground, the boxes burst open, exploding out thousands of nails. The pile was nearly 3 feet high at its peak, before the edges began to roll away and it flattened, revealing what was underneath. Bryn had time to open her mouth, but not scream. And when they'd finally dug her up, that same mouth, open and slack in death, was full of nails. So yeah, the nail game. It still circulates every now and again in my town, though I figure when I leave for college that'll be the last time I hear about it. I hope, anyway. Because Bryn, she said where she came from, everyone played it. Meaning somewhere out there, it could still be spreading in different small towns, and some kid could be leaving a window open and a candle and bait beside it. They'd be thinking they're playing a game, but not knowing the price when you lose.